This is the full instructions for the cardigan, which anyone might either want to take a screenshot or just copy down what is written down there. And I will, it's on the other page. And I think it's held it on long enough. I'm now going to start the tutorial. Hello everyone, it's Sheila back with another tutorial. This time I'm doing a 24-inch mock panel rib v-neck cardigan, and it's 5.5 stitches widthwise to the inch. Doesn't matter about your length, you just knit to whatever length you want. I'm using 3 1/4 and 4mm needles, and I'm casting on 71 stitches for the rib, and I'm doing 1 by 1 rib for 12 rows. I'm doing twisted rib, but anyone just please do whatever kind of rib you prefer, whether you prefer twisted or ordinary, but that's what I'm doing, twisted. And I've been casting the stitches on. I have 65 stitches on here, and this is a cable cast on I'm doing, so I'm going to show you I'm casting on the rest. And for anyone that doesn't know, a cable cast on is you put the needle behind the whole stitch, not through it, so you're going between your first stitch on the needle and the one behind. So that's 65, 66, 67, 68, 69, 70, 71. That's my 71 stitches. And then I'm going to knit 12 rows in twisted rib. And just in case there may be some of you out there who don't know how to do twisted rib, it's just knit into the back of the knit stitch an ordinary purl, knit into the back of the knit stitch again, ordinary purl, back of the knit stitch, ordinary purl, back of the knit stitch, and that's all it is. You just knit into the back of every knit stitch. And for anyone interested, this yarn I'm using is James C. Brett Driftwood double knitting. This was sent to me by one of my subscribers on my other channel. Sandra sent this to me. She sent me 2 balls. It's 100-gram balls, and there are 290 meters, and it's 100% anti-pilling acrylic. This the next instructions. As you can see, I've knit the 12 rows, and I've knit the first 2 rows of the pattern, and I'll read what it says here first. I've knit the 12 rows, change to 4mm needles and commence the pattern. The row 1 is knit 1, purl 1, then knit 3, purl 1, and the stars above repeat from those stars to the last stitch, knit 1. And the row 2 is just purl across the row. These 2 rows form the pattern, knit to 9.5 inches to the armhole. So I will show you. So the pattern is, as I just said, knit 1, purl 1, knit 3, that's purl 1, knit 3, purl 1. I've got this one stuck here. Purl 1, knit 3, purl 1, knit 3. Just repeat that. Purl 1, knit 3 all the way across the row to the last stitch, knit 1. And I'm on to the last 5 stitches, and I'm going to knit 3, purl 1, and knit the last stitch. That's the first row of the pattern. And the next row is just purl all the way across the row. Nothing else to worry about, just purl. And I will meet you at the end of that row. And I'm at the end of the row, the last 4 stitches. I'm going to purl those stitches. So that is all there is to the pattern. There's 2 rows. 1 row is knit 3, purl 1, knit 3, purl 1. And the second row is all purl. So there's only 2 rows to the pattern, and it's in multiples of 4. And that is all you need to know. Just knit those 2 rows until you get to, I'm knitting to 9.5 inches up to the armholes. But use that's following this to whatever length that you want to. And I will be back when I get that far. So we've now knitted 9.5 inches up to the armhole, and we're about to start the armhole shaping, which I'll show you how to do. I'll blow that up a little bit. So we're going to cast off 3 stitches at the beginning of the next 2 rows. That's just normal cast off. I'm just doing knit cast off, so moving over the purl stitch. So that's 1, 2, 3, and then just knit across that row. And I will meet you at the end of that row. And I'm coming to the end of the row. Now the second row, I'm going to cast off 3 stitches purlwise. That's 3 stitches purlwise, and then just purl across that row. Now I'll meet you at the end of that row. And we are now at the end of this row, and the last 3 stitches. And now I'm going to knit 1 row and purl 1 row before I start the actual decreasing stitches. So let's just follow the pattern. The knit 3, purl 1. Just need to follow that pattern across the row. And now I'll meet you at the end of that row. And we're almost at the end of this row. Purl 1 and knit 2. Now the purl row is going to be a little bit different. We're going to knit the first 2 stitches on the purl row and then purl across to the last 2 stitches. Now we'll meet you at the end of that row. And again, we're almost at the end of the row. We've purled to the last 2 stitches, and the last 2 stitches we're going to knit. Now the next row and every alternate row is knit 2, slip 1 stitch, knit 1 stitch, pass the slip stitch over, knit in pattern, and now we'll meet up with you near the end of that row. And we're almost at the end of this row. I'm going to knit 1, knit 2 together, knit the last 2 stitches. Now the next row is the same as the last purl row you did. You knit the first 2 stitches and purl to the end of the row to the last 2 stitches. And I will meet you at the end of that row. And I'm on to my last 4 stitches. I'm going to purl 2 and knit 2. And that is how the shaping will be done. So you will have a small garter stitch edge to the shaping, and that is just every other row you're going to decrease the way I've just shown, and every purl row you will purl 2, you will knit 2 stitches at the start and at the finish of the purl row. So I will come back when I get up to the end of that shaping. So this is the back finished, and I've blown it up to show you that this is what the garter stitch seam, raglan seam looks like on both sides. And pull it back down again. And that is the finished back. And the whole thing measures 15.5 inches up to the back of the neck. And I decreased the instructions. I decreased until I had 23 stitches remaining. And you can either, it depends what type of button band you're doing, but I'm going to do a button band where I'm picking up all the stitches up the front and around the neck and that. But if you're doing a button band where you're going to knit it and sew it on afterwards, you would cast the stitches off. But I placed them on a holder here for when I pick the stitches up. So that was from the armholes where I told you to cast off 3 stitches. I'll blow this up. I don't know whether it'll get a bit too big. I had to cast off 3 stitches at the beginning of the next 2 rows, decreasing rows from row 4, knit 2, slip 1, knit 1, pass the slip stitch over, knit to last 4 stitches, knit 2 together, and then knit 2, and the 5th row is knit 2, purl to the last 2 stitches, knit 2, and continue decreasing this way until you have 23 stitches remaining, and either cast off these stitches or place on a holder, depends what type of button bands. So after that I will be doing the sleeves. I hold that for anybody that might want to copy what I have written down there. I'll hold it there for a few seconds, long enough for anyone to type it, to write it down. I'm doing the sleeve on this tutorial now, and I've casted on 35 stitches and knit 12 rows in 1x1 twisted rib, or you do whatever rib you prefer, but I prefer the twisted rib. And then I have knit the first stitch, purled the second stitch, knit 3, purl 1, knit 3 across the end of the row, and then I've done purl 1, knit 1 at the end. And that is the start. Now I've already done, this is what I did before, the other sleeve, just to show what it's going to come out like. It does look narrow, but because it's rib, it's like any kind, it's a mock rib, but like any kind of rib, it stretches when it's worn, as you can see. And I had to do the first sleeve first, so I could work out all the measurements and everything, and work out the increasing and the decreasing. So now I'm going to show you what I'm doing now. And I'm keeping a ruler at the top of there so that my hands don't go past the ruler, because that's something when I'm doing these tutorials, sometimes my hand goes past and you can't see what I'm doing. So I know I haven't got to go past that ruler when I'm doing anything. That'll keep it in focus. So now I've knit 2 rows and I'm on to the 3rd row, and I'm going to increase on the 3rd row, and the 3rd row is a purl row. And the reason I do that is because it's easy to incorporate the stitches into the pattern if you do it from the purl side. So what I'm doing, because the purl side is all purl all the way across, so I'm purling the first stitch, the second stitch, and then I'm picking up, there's a little bar you can see between the stitches here. I'm picking that up and putting it onto the needle, and I'm sort of got to lift that stitch a little bit, and then I'm purling into it, and then purling across the row. And you can see, you can't see where the stitch has been picked up, it's went into the knitting. And that's how you'll be doing the increases on the sleeves. The better done like that, because you can work it into the pattern better when you're doing it on a row where there's no different stitches. So you're going to knit across the row to the last 2 stitches, and I'll meet you when I get there. And I'm at my last 3 stitches. I'm going to knit 1 stitch, pick up that bar between the stitches and put it onto the needle, and then you'll have to pick that stitch up with your finger. It helps, it's easier to get the needle into it. Now I've picked only half of it up. Purl into it and then purl the other 2 stitches. Now that's the first increase, and as you can see, it's welded into the knitting. You can't see where there's no holes where it was. Now you have to work that stitch in on the front, and you can see that's where the purl stitch is there. So 1, 2, 3, and that's going to be a purl stitch. So you're going to knit 2 stitches, Purl the next stitch, knit 3 stitches, purl your next stitch, knit your 3 stitches again, purl 1, and now I'll meet you at the end of that row. And now we're at the last 4 stitches. I'm going to knit 1, that's the 3 stitches, knit stitches, purl 1 and knit 2. And the next row is just purl, and that's how you're going to increase all the way up until you have, to check, sleeves, 51 stitches. And I will come back when I get that far and show you what to do then. But this is the sleeve. The sleeves here, using 3.25mm needles, cast on 35 stitches and knit 1 by 1 rib for 12 rows. Change to 4mm needles. Row 1 is knit 1, purl 1, knit 3. Repeat from star to star. To last 2 stitches, purl 1, knit 1. Row 2 is purl across the row, and you decrease on the 3rd and every 6th row until you have 51 stitches. Then you will knit to 10 inches, which my 10 inches is 64 rows. Then I will come back and show you the rest when I get that far. Right, we are now up to the armholes. I'm going to cast off 3 stitches the next 2 rows. 1, 2, 3. Then we're going to knit across. Oops, lost that stitch. We're going to knit across the row. And I will meet you at the end of that row. Then I'm at the end of this row. And now I'm going to cast off 3 stitches at the start of the purl row. 1, 2, 3, and purl across that row now. It's a different time of day doing this video, so the light has changed. It's night time, I'm having to put the light on. It's casting a shadow. I will meet you at the end of that row. And we are at the end of that row. And we're going to decrease on the 4th row, the 8th row and the 12th row, and then every alternate row after that. But I will show you the first. So I'm going to knit 2 rows and then I'll be back after that. And that is the purl row knit, and I knit the first 2 stitches and the last 2 stitches on that row. That's for the garter edge on the the edge of the raglan. Now this is the 4th row we're on to now, and I'm going to knit 2, slip 1, knit 1, pass the slip stitch over, and then continue in pattern to the last 4 stitches. And now I'll meet you when I get to those last stitches. And we are now at the last 4 stitches, and I'm going to knit 2 together and knit the last 2 stitches. Now on the purl row you want to garter stitch edge, so we're knitting the first 2 stitches and purling across that row to the last 2 stitches. And I'll meet you at the end of that row. And we are almost at the end of that row. We're going to purl 2 stitches and knit the last 2 stitches. And that is the shaping. We've done the shaping on the 4th row, then we're going to do it on the 8th row, then the 12th row, and from the 14th row it'll be every alternate row until you have 7 stitches remaining, which is what is on this one here. I can't make out the there's 1, 2, 3, and then onto the alternate ones until you have 7 stitches, and you'll be leaving that on a safety pin. But I will come back when I get to the end and show you that. So that's the 1, 2, 3 decreases every 4th row. So the first 4th row, the 8th row and the 12th row. And now we're going to decrease on every alternate row until we'll have 7 stitches remaining, and that will be the sleeve finished. That's the decreasing finished on the sleeve, and I was left with 7 stitches, which I've put on a safety pin to pick up for the when I do the bands. So that's both sleeves knitted. And this is the start of the left front. So for the left front I've cast on 35 stitches, knit 12 rows, knit 1 purl 1 rib, and I've started the pattern, and the pattern is knit 3, purl 1, knit 3, purl 1 to the last 3 stitches, and then you knit 3. And that is going to be to knit like that until it measures 9.5 inches. So for the sleeves, the instructions here. There. Now the sleeves are used 325mm needles, 35 stitches, and knit 1 rib, 1 by 1 rib for 12 rows. I'll put that down a bit. It's for 12 rows, change to 4mm needles. The first row is knit 1, purl 1, knit 3, repeat from star to star to last 2 stitches, purl 1, knit 1. Row 2 is purl across row and decrease on 3rd in every 6th row to 51 stitches till you got to 10 inches, which was 64 rows for me. And then the armholes, cast off 3 stitches, begin the next 2 rows, knit 2 rows, decrease on the 4th row, the next 8th row and the 12th rows, and then every alternate row until 7 stitches remain, and place those stitches on a holder or safety pin, which I have done. Now the left front is using 325mm needles. You cast it on 35 stitches and knit 1 by 1 rib for 12 rows. Change to 4mm needles. For row 1 it is knit 3, purl 1, repeat across the row to last 3 stitches, knit 3, row 2 is purl, continue in pattern to 9.5 inches, and for me that's 60 rows. And the next thing is the armhole and the V-neck shaping, but I'll tell you that when I come to it. So I have now knitted 9.5 inches up the side of the cardigan. Now I'm going to shape the armholes and the V-neck, and I'll blow that up so it's easier to see. So I'm going to cast off 3 stitches the start of this row. That's 1, 2, 3, and now I'm going to knit across that row to the last 3 stitches. And now I'll meet you when I get there. And now I'm at the last 3 stitches, and those I'm going to knit 2 together and knit the last stitch. And that's the start of the shaping. I'm going to knit another 3 rows, and then I will come back after I've knit those rows. And I'm now on to the last 4 stitches of the 3rd row. So that's 1, purl 2, and remember you're doing a garter stitch border on the raglan. So we're doing 2 knit stitches at the end of that purl row. And now for the shaping again. So we're going to do knit 2, slip 1 stitch, knit the next stitch, slip that stitch over. That's your decreasing on the armhole. And now we're going to knit to the last 3 stitches. And I'll meet you when I get there. And I'm now at my last 4 stitches. I'm going to knit 1, knit 2 together, and knit the last stitch. And that is how your shaping will go for the V-neck. From now on you'll be decreasing on every alternate row on the armhole and on every 4th row on the V-neck until you reach 5 stitches, and then I will come back then. You now have 4 stitches remaining. So we're going to knit 1, slip 1, knit 1, pass the slip stitch over, knit 1, next row is purl 1, knit 2, next row, knit 1, slip 1, knit 1, pass the slip stitch over, the next row, purl 2 stitches together. and then we just need to pull that through and tighten up the I think I've got that stitch twisted a little bit there. So that's the left front finished. All we need now is the next part of the tutorial where I'll show how to sew up the raglans, and only the raglans, because we're going to pick up the stitches for the neck. And so we only sew up the raglans to do that, because I'm going to pick the stitches up all the way up the front, up around the neck, round the neck, and down the other side. I'm doing the whole lot all in one. So we only sew up the raglans, because if you sew the sides up at the same time, you won't be able to pick all those stitches all up, because it'll pull too tight. So I will be back when I sew the raglans up. But in the meantime, this is the instructions for the left front, which was use 3.25 needles, cast on 35 stitches and knit 1 by 1 rib for 12 rows. Change to 4mm needles. Row 1 is knit 3, purl 1. Repeat across the row to last 3 stitches and then knit 3. Row 2 is purl, continuing pattern to 9.5 inches. My 9.5 inches is 60 rows. And then for the armhole in the V-neck shaping, you cast off 3 stitches at the beginning of next row, pattern to the last 3 stitches, knit 2 together, knit 1. Next row is purl to last 2 stitches. Third row, oh, I haven't wrote it down there, but purl to last 2 stitches and then knit those 2 stitches. Third row, pattern to end of row. And the fourth row is purl to last 2 stitches and knit 2. Next row, knit 2, slip 1, knit 1, pass slip stitch over, knit to last 3 stitches, knit 2 together and knit 1. Continue decreasing at armhole edge on all alternate rows, and at the same time decrease at neck edge on every 4th row until 4 stitches remain. And the next row is knit 1, slip 1, pass slip stitch over and knit 1. Next row, purl 1, knit 2. Next row, knit 1, slip 1, knit 1, pass slip stitch over. Next row, purl 2 together, and that's your sleeve, side finished. To sew up the seams, you'll need, I have my pin cushion with the needles and pins in, and a pair of scissors. And I've already stitched 2 seams. As you can see here, you can see that seam, and when you sew the seams, you don't pull the stitches too tight when you're sewing. You still want to be able to stretch the seams like that, like on the other side. If you sew them, if you pull the stitches too tight when you're sewing, it's going to pucker up the seam, make it look gathered, and it's going to make it look short with the rest of the cardigan. So I'll show what I mean when I'm sewing it up here. I have this one pinned ready. And you start your sewing, you find the 2 little notches on either end. That's where I start the sewing there. I'll take that pin out. And then you just follow those notches. They are a guide. You have a little notch there at the end of the row and one there. Just use those as a guide for your seam. And don't pull the stitch too tight, leave a little bit give. There's nothing looks worse than a well knitted cardigan and the seams have been pulled up too tight and they look gathered and puckered. And you can leave it your stitch quite slack with this kind of wool, because there's all different colours in it, and whatever you can see on the other side just blends in with the colours. You can pin out. So that's what I'm doing. I call them little notches on the end of the row, especially on a garter type edge. It's very easy to follow those little notches because they stand out on the seam. And if you have the right number of rows to correspond with each piece, those notches should match up all the way down the seam. And we're on to the last little bit where the cast off stitches were, and I oversew those ones. When I come to that part, I just oversew them. Then to finish it off, these needles for sewing don't have very sharp points for getting through the double parts, and I just put the needle through, wrap the wool around the needle and pull it through. It makes a little like knot. I'm having trouble getting the needle through that part again. And that's done 3 times, and that should be enough to secure and that's the seam. And as you can see, there's still a bit of stretch in it. It's not puckered, or I look on the other side, it blends in. The colour, with having a lot of different colours, you can see the stitch on the other side, but it just blends in with all the different wool colours in the wool. So that's how you do how you sew the raglan seam up. So I've got the 4 seams stitched up, and I've put 1 or 2 pins in just to keep these flat down, so I can measure the front and see exactly how many stitches I will have to pick up for the thing. Well, we know that the back length was 9.5, and the sides, which actually it was 9.5, but when you come to sew these up, you usually get about a ½ inch extra, which is, this one is 10 inches actually on there when you look at it there. So I'm measuring from here. I'm going to 9.5 inches. I'll put it on the 9.5 inches, that's that way around. So what I do to work out how many stitches is, I have some stitch markers here, little stitch markers. I'll probably not have enough of those type. I prefer those type, but if I run out, I've got the round ones here. So I put a stitch marker up here. That's 9.5 inches there. And then it's from the the neck, we have to pick the stitches up from there. It's 6.5 inches, so we'll put another marker up there. And then I work out, I'm working on 6.5 stitches to the inch. So I'm going to work out, I'm going to put markers in around about every 2 inches, but this is a funny number, so I'll put it just a little bit less than 2 inches. Just there. Next one is just a bit less than 4 inches. Just a bit less than the 6 inches. And just a bit less than the 8 inches. So and the same with the top. There's going to be, see, 6.5 inches, so that's just less than 2 inches for the top here. Just less than 4 inches. No, sorry, it's a bit more than 2 inches. I'm seeing a bit less. It's a bit more than, I'm putting the markers a bit more than 2 inches. Slightly more to make up for that extra ½ inch. And the same with this one. Yeah. So that's how I work out the for picking up the bands, and I'm working on 6 stitches, about 6 stitches to the inch. So I'm going to work out 6. That's 16 inches altogether. 16 times 6. So that's 96 stitches that I'll have from there up to there. And then I'm going to divide that by 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 spaces. So 8 into 9 goes once and 1 over. 8 into 16 goes twice. So that means I'm going to pick up 12 stitches between each space. And then I'll pick up the stitches from the sleeve, the neck and the sleeve, and then do the same down the other side. I'll mark the other side with the markers the same as I've done this side. And I will pick up 12 stitches in between each marker down that side. And then when I've done so many rows, I'll work out where I'm putting the buttonholes. And that's how I work out the how I pick stitches up for where you're picking stitches up for the bands instead of knitting them straight up and then sewing them on afterwards. We have 1, 2, 3, 4, and that's 5. 1, 2, 3, 4. I need that one higher up. 1, 2, 3. 4. and 5. So I will be back after I've picked up the stitches and let you see how the band come out. And this is the cardigan. I've picked up all the stitches for to do the band, and I think, I'm not absolutely certain, but I think I have 231 stitches, and I've done a couple of rows. The very first row I don't know how clearly you can see it there, but after I've picked the stitches up, the first row I do is like a garter stitch. I make a garter stitch row so that there's like an edge to the band. I think it looks neater that way. And I'm up to where I'm going to do the buttonholes, and what I've done is I've put stitch markers in where I'm going to do the buttonholes, and I'm just going to knit 2 wool forward, knit 2 together for the buttonholes, but do it very slack. So I've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. That's what I'm doing. I've done that'll be on the third row, and I think I'll probably knit another 4 rows after that and then cast the stitches off. I don't want to do it too wide because that's all the wool I have left, and I'm not sure how far that's going to go, so I'm not going to do a very wide band. But if any of you that's following this and might find it a bit daunting picking up the stitches, especially if you've got over 200 stitches on the needle, I haven't got a circular one with this size, a 3.25mm. I would have used that to pick the stitches up, because as you can see, they are all bunched up on the needle. I forgot about that when I decided to do the band this way. But if there are any of you who might want to just do an ordinary band, just cast on about 9 stitches and knit 1, purl 1 all the way around, measuring where you would put the buttonholes up against the cardigan as you go, and then you would have to stitch it on afterwards. I prefer doing it this way because I don't have to stitch it on afterwards. But as the cardigans get bigger, I would probably do bands the other way, where knitting them and then stitching them on. So that's a little bit for now. I'll come back when I've finished and show you the finished thing. Well, that's the finished cardigan, band done, and the buttons on. Turn sideways. So I can now put this up on my YouTube channel now. So if you like this, would like to see more, a thumbs up and subscribe. And I'll let you know when I do my next tutorial. So bye for now.